American trade is critical to creating a healthy economy and to giving American workers a competitive advantage when we want to export our products that we make here to other countries that right now have limitations and blockades in front of us. So it's important to keeping that ability for America to not only compete but to win on world markets.
Go ahead and try to remember the last time conservatives and progressives were seeing so eye to eye on anything. In this case, it's the Trans-Pacific Partnership, conveniently coined ObamaTrade. But the left is screaming mad that President Obama would so casually spit in the eye of organized labor, and the right is popping blood vessels over how the president is about to wreck the earning power of Americans and allow foreign money to further pollute our economy. Yet with all this pounding of fists, two of the right's top movers and shakers, Ways and Means Chairman Paul Ryan, House Speaker John Boehner, they're pushing hard to get the president his votes. That leads to this edition of The Political Animal. Republican strategist and president of Endeavor Strategic Communications, Kurt Bardella, joined by Democratic strategist and former Deputy Staff Secretary to President Bill Clinton, David Goodfriend. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. And Kurt, seeing as we're talking about the right getting involved here, let me come to you first, because there are some people on the right who are screaming this is the wrong thing to do, yet you've got John Boehner in there pushing it. Why?
Well, I think that the reality is that under any scenario, there are some people who are just against anything having to do with President Obama, and that's not going to change no matter whether the issue is trade, healthcare, energy, the economy. It doesn't make a difference. I think that Speaker Boehner and a lot of the House Republican leadership are recognizing that there's a broader issue at play here. The United States standing in a global community, taking action so that trade partnerships can go forward. And right now, for so long, we have been sitting out and allowing strongholds like China to do trade negotiations unilaterally without any U.S. presence at all. And this is a time where we need U.S. leadership, and it would send a terrible message to the global community if we once again turn our backs on an opportunity to play a leading role in a major trade agreement.
David, is that just it? Finally, inexorably, unbelievably, we're actually seeing left and right get together behind the president?
Not exactly. I think that you are certainly seeing some Democrats in the Senate and a smaller proportion in the House get behind the president. But there's no doubt that there's a rift among Democrats, with the most progressive Democrats having a lot of trouble with this agreement. I point, of course, to Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, who said that this process is so secretive and so run by large corporate interests that average working class Americans are shut out in the process, and that has to mean that ultimately they're gonna lose out in the outcome. And think about it this way: you can agree that trade increases the gross domestic product, and yet if you look at who controls and owns and benefits from most of our gross domestic product, it's disproportionately at the top end of the earners. So if you're in the bottom half of American earners, even if the GDP somehow is going to go up under trade, and I'm not convinced it always does, but even if you accept that, those benefits are going to go to multinational corporations. So the argument goes. And that is truly sticking in the craw of progressive Democrats in the House in particular right now.
Let's talk about something else sticking in some people's craws right here, and that's Obamacare. David, first up, Congress has to fix Obamacare if the court guts it. This according to Health and Human Services Secretary Sylvia Burwell. Wait a minute, Congress fixing Obamacare? David, stop me, please. I mean, it's frightening indeed to think that Congress could fix anything.
Well, Congress passed Obamacare, a different Congress. It's a law of the land. If the Supreme Court is to eviscerate subsidies that go to people who are on a federal exchange, the only way to fix that, if you want to fix it, is to change the statute. Now, I still harbor some hope that the Supreme Court, because it didn't want to overturn Obamacare last time, is going to see that the practical effect of their decision would be, in fact, to overturn Obamacare. But if they do go forward and, again, take away federal subsidies for the people living in the majority of states that don't have a state-run exchange, the only real relief those people would have, is a change in law by Congress. Now, if Congress fails to do that, you're going to have 16 million plus very angry Americans, and they'll leave their anger at the doorstep of the Republican Party in 2016. That leaves a lot of Republicans awake at night with good reason.
Kurt, is Congress then the right people to fix it? And oh yeah, let's talk about Republicans staying awake at night, because I'm looking at my numbers right here. Let's see. We've got predominantly Republican states who are going to be affected if indeed SCOTUS does strip out Obamacare.
Well, one, I think it's a tough case to make to say that Republicans are going to be anyway at fault for Obamacare not working or Obamacare being struck down, parts of it being deemed unconstitutional. I remember during this debate in Congress when Obamacare was up, many Republicans made the case that there were many legal concerns with how it was constructed. And so here we are years later, and some of those things are looking to be true. I think it's ironic that the executive branch is now looking to a Republican Congress to fix what they pushed through with hardly any Republican support at all. It's disingenuous at best to say that this is a Republican problem when it was Democrat policies and Democrat bullying that put this in place in the first place.
All right, I got about a minute left here. Let's look at some more money again. David, to you first, quickly. Marco Rubio, now the New York Times, they were talking about traffic tickets. Now they're talking about his financial struggles, but they are evident here. Do you think that this is something that the left has got to focus on here and that will indeed hurt Marco Rubio no matter how much press he gets?
Well, I don't think it would hurt Marco Rubio politically if he's had trouble making ends meet, because a lot of Americans have had trouble making ends meet, and I think a lot of people would be able to relate to that. What I do think would prove to be a problem for him is if there was any, I would just call it inappropriate activity or things that he's tried to hide in the past. That always gets people upset. I mean, trust me, people are always more upset at the cover-up than the crime in these political games, and I think as long as he's forthcoming and makes this a relatable element of his campaign, look, I'm just like you, I can't afford to do this, that, or other thing, that may actually benefit him with the public.
15 seconds to you, Kurt. Are the financial issues going to dog him and hurt him?
Let me tell you, the last thing that Democrats want to do is make the personal finances of a candidate the central issue, as we've seen how they have completely eroded Hillary Clinton's poll numbers when the focus is on her. The fact that their nominee has so many ethical clouds around how much money, millions of dollars that she's taken in from foreign governments, they don't want to have this conversation.
And the beat goes on. Kurt Bardella, David Goodfriend, thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. Always a pleasure. Coming up next, everything from a Texas cop resigning to rotating first ladies.